Dante wrote, "The path to paradise begins in hell." Join Deacon Prendergast and David Fortin as they discuss the tools men need to build the domestic church and the spiritual weapons to defend it. This is Through the Fire.
Hello, friends. Welcome to this episode of Through the Fire. I'm David Fortin, joined by the man himself, Deacon Prendergast.
The man himself?
Yeah, I just, build you up.
Well, thank you.
Before I take you down.
How you doing? Yeah, that won't be hard.
No.
How you doing, buddy?
I am well. I know that a lot of times in your situation as an ordained minister in the Catholic Church, people approach you about some pretty sensitive topics. They want to talk to you. They want to share their heart with you.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those problems are marital problems.
That's true.
I'm fortunate.
True.
I am married to such a great woman who...
You are.
She takes care of me. And I know Marilyn is really, really good to you. So
yep. No, I'm blessed.
A lot of these things that we're going to talk about tonight may not pertain to us, but our hearts go out to those people that are having problems with their marriage. So
Absolutely.
Deacon, where do we get started?
So, well, that's actually the perfect thing to say. Where do we get started? Well, we get started at the beginning. And this is a problem because not enough people really have the attitude of entering into this, supposed to be a lifelong relationship, but they don't enter into it with the right attitude. They don't enter into it for the right reason. And it's, I get it. It's tough. And thank goodness that the church gives us the option when things were never supposed to be. The church gives us that option of having an annulment. But we don't want to go down that road. We want our marriage to be successful. And so it really begins at the beginning. What is your attitude when you're dating? I mean, are you just looking for a good time? Or, and I don't mean to be insensitive about this, but is your dating attitude kind of like an interview process for a spouse for the rest of your life? Dave, we've talked about this. I work with at-risk youth. So I work with teenage boys and girls. And before that, when I was a cop in New York City, I worked as a youth officer. So I've had these conversations over and over and over again. Sure, I get it. You're excited, you're young, you're filled with all kinds of enthusiasm and energy. And it's really easy to get swept away with the moment. But really, the attitude should be, first of all, I want my married life to be profoundly better than my dating life. That should be the starting point before anything else is even considered. And if that is the starting point, then you have to start prioritizing and asking yourself questions. How exactly will my dating life be different? What will I reserve for my married life? And of course, the most obvious is, your sexual behavior. That's the first spot to land on. But sadly, the way modern society is and the hookup culture and everything else, there's almost like an expectation that you have to be sexually active, even if there is truly no expectation whatsoever to be in any sort of long-term relationship with that person.
Deacon, I want to ask you a question. You kind of touched on it a little bit. Is it a healthy viewpoint, of a healthy way to live, to always be trying to make your life better? It probably sounds like a stupid question, but...
Well, actually, it's not, because how many people do we know, they kind of just settle into a rut and they figure, well, this is just the way that it is. And so no, I think actually it's an important thing to touch on, because we're always supposed to be improving ourselves, improving our circumstances, improving our relationship with Christ, with the saints, with the Blessed Mother, with our spouse. No, we're supposed to. We're not supposed to. When we kind of lay back on our laurels or what have you, you start to become dangerously close to one of the 7 deadly sins, which is sloth. You start to get dangerously close to that. So no, we're supposed to improve, but the thing is that we need to be aware, right? We need to be aware of What does that look like? What does it look like to improve? What does it look like to make things better? What does it look like to grow in holiness? What does it look like to grow in relationships? So if you don't have a foundation of what that looks like, well, then it's kind of hard to find it. So, it starts, and I talk to the kids, and I was having this conversation not long ago, and I was having it with a teenage girl and a couple of them. It was a group of girls. They're almost automatic. They started saying, yes, yes, you got to remain a virgin until, yes. But it's like so much more than that. It's so much more. As a church, we get accused of being outdated and old fashioned because we use words like modesty. But if you understand, modesty is important, both for men and women. Modesty is very important. I've mentioned this to kids frequently when we do talk about human sexuality, and I'll touch on Pope John Paul the Great's theology of the body, which is very, very important, and every teenager should have somewhat of a working understanding of what St. John Paul the Great is trying to teach in his theology of the body, because it then makes everything clear as to how am I supposed to behave? Why do I have the feelings that I have? What am I supposed to do with them? But I talk about this with some of the kids, and that excitement, that euphoria, the thrill of the erotic side of sexuality, the thrill of that, God made that. God made that for us to enjoy it and appreciate it and use it. Question always becomes how? How are we going to enjoy it, appreciate it, and use it? And, you know, there are those that believe that even in marriage, oh, well, when you're married, anything goes. Well, no, there's still order and disorder. But that thrill, that euphoria that you feel having that encounter, that sexual encounter with your spouse, that's where it was created to be experienced so that it would draw you and your spouse even closer together to each other. But we just have to, so that it starts with this foundational question, this foundational understanding of what do I reserve for marriage and what do I express during my dating years or dating life. And so it's important for every one of us to kind of enter into that understanding, that back and forth questioning. I was speaking with a group of girls not long ago, and I was explaining to them, they're teenagers, and I was trying to really explain to them the value and the benefit of saying no. Girls feel all kinds of pressure. Even adult women, our wives, there's all kinds of pressure. And so there is a value, there is a benefit, especially for the unmarried women, in saying no, in having a standard that is unbreakable. And these are the things that are just not spoken about. They're not talked about in society today, the absolute value and the benefit of being able to preserve your virtue, preserve your virginity, your innocence, however you want to describe it. There is a benefit in preserving that for your spouse, regardless of whether you're a man or a woman. It doesn't make a difference. But there is a benefit in preserving that for the one that you're going to marry. I want to be delicate about this. In speaking about marriage, these are things that are just not spoken about enough. I was meditating on what does it mean to sacrifice? I promise you, I'm going to tie this all in together. But what does it mean to offer a sacrifice? To enter into a covenant? All throughout history, a covenant, I remember listening to a talk that Jeff Cavins gave about the covenant between Abram, and God, and how he was talking about the similarities between that covenant and other covenants that would have occurred during that time. And he related it to a marriage. And what he had described, what he did it so eloquently, he said that if a covenant was like a contract, an agreement between two families, And he said that, you would take like an animal, whether it's an ox or what, a bull or whatever, and they would cut the animal from head to tail, right down the middle, and lay it open in halves. The heads of each of the families would then enter into this bloody mess, standing inside the guts of this thing, as the terms of the covenant would be read aloud for everyone to hear. And part of this whole experience would be this understanding that this is serious business. That, the head of my family, my clan, my tribe, my nation, whatever, the head of my family is now standing in this bloody mess with the head of that other family over there. And they are reading aloud before all the families, all the peoples, and before God the terms of this covenant. I will do this. You will do that. I will not do this. You will not do that. And if either of us break this covenant, may what's happened to this bull happen to us. I mean, that's heavy duty stuff. And Jeff was, as he's describing this, he said, man, if you were a kid and you witnessed the covenant between your family and whatever the other family was, that would be a day you will never, ever forget. And, when we marry, it's actually not much different. It's really not much different. Now let's just, gather our thoughts for a second here and consider what the ideal marriage would look like. Now, I know that many of you who are listening, you're going to come up with all kinds of, yeah, but what about this? What about that? I'm speaking about the ideal, because when God puts things in motion, God is always speaking about the ideal, understanding that we will fall short of it. But God never starts in third place, fourth place, second place. No, he starts in first position always. So we need to seek out that first position as well. We need to seek out the ideal. Okay. So now, when we're talking about a marriage, a wedding, we're talking about two families coming together. And we see the same thing as what Jeff Cavins described with the two heads of the family. We see that when we go into the church. This is why the sacrament of matrimony is so important, because it's ancient. It is ancient. And so when we go into the church, what do we see? We see that center aisle, and we see one family on one side, another family on another side. We see that there's the groomsmen, the men are standing up there waiting. Here's something also to consider. Why is it that such a big deal is made out of the bride walking down that center aisle? Consider this. Consider the notion. The bride is the sacrifice. She's both the sacrificial victim as well as the sacramental partner. She's coming down that center aisle. She's being given away by her father. Sound like a sacrifice to you? Yeah. Sound like a covenant relationship? Yeah. And then we can go one step further and, without being graphic at all, assuming that she is entering that wedding night as a virgin, has there been bloodletting? Yeah. Think about this. Think about the dynamics of an ideal sacramental covenant matrimonial experience, step by step by step. That's why this is such a big deal, and it's ancient. It is ancient. And this is also why, by the way, it's such a big deal in the Catholic Church not to just dismiss marriages and they go ahead and get a divorce. Even Jesus said, Moses only allowed it because of the hardness of your heart, but it was never meant to be that way. It's not meant to be that way. But if you really think about how big of a deal it is to get married, that's why, you talk to kids and you got to understand the kids, they may not fully grasp all the nuances of how much of a big deal is about to happen. And this is why you can't get married on a beach. You can't get married roller skating, skydiving. You can't make light. You shouldn't be making light of this. This is also why shame on all of us who have the attitude of, I don't want to go to the church. It's boring. I'll just go to the reception. The reception is not important. Who cares about the reception? What's important is what's taking place in the church and how you have these two families that are now coming together in a covenant relationship through their children. And that the father is offering up his daughter and the other father is offering up his son. And the two families are there witnessing this. And the victim and sacramental partner, the wife and her father, are walking down that center aisle. She's being presented to all the people. This is why she's veiled. She's veiled in innocence and purity. She's been kept apart. She's been, in a way, almost consecrated, kept apart, set aside. Virgin. Now here she comes down that center aisle and she comes up to the altar. She enters the sanctuary of the church. She enters where the altar is. And then what happens? The minister is there, who, by the way, the priest or deacon or bishop is only there to witness on behalf of the church. The ministers of that sacrament is actually the husband and wife. The two people getting married, they are the ministers. They are the ones that speak the words. They are the ones that are offering the terms of the contract. That they are agreeing to the terms of the covenant. And who are they doing it in front of? Yes, they're doing it in front of their family and friends, but more importantly, they're doing it in front of God. This is also why at the end of it all, you have those famous words, till death do us part. Because God is basically saying, you're making this promise to each other in front of me. And I'm going to hold you to it until you come back to me. Because once you come back to me, there is no marrying or giving unto marriage, because all of humanity becomes the bride and Christ is the groom. But, we don't make enough of a big deal out of this. And then we talk about how the marriage has to be consummated. And without getting into detail, we know what that means. And that's when it becomes a blood sacrifice. Again, in an ideal situation, it becomes the shedding of blood, a blood sacrifice. Where now the wife is offering herself to the husband. This is an important theological concept to understand, because it also plays into why it is that the Catholic Church cannot ever have women priests. It's all related to each other. So when you think about the importance of marriage, then you have to understand that a husband and wife, the domestic church, it's meant to reflect the heavenly wedding feast. And so in the heavenly wedding feast, if we start there, Jesus is the groom, all of humanity is the bride. Jesus is the seed. Okay, so we have that story in Scripture about the sower, and he sows seeds, and some of it lands on a footpath, some of it lands in a rocky area, some of it goes in the weeds or the thorns, some of it lands on fertile ground. Now, when we dig into that and we understand Jesus is talking about the gospel taking root in our soul, he still is the gospel. He is those seeds. And so the way this works is that he is the seed. The seed needs to be planted in fertile ground. So he's the groom. Okay, we don't need to get too deep into, high school biology here. Allow yourself to imagine this. He is the seed. Jesus is the gospel. He is the truth. He is the seed. He is planted in fertile ground. That is the church. where it grows. Okay? So now you take a look at the domestic church. We know from Ephesians 5, Jesus talks about, as Paul talks about, as Christ is the head of the church, the husband is the head of the family. The husband is meant to be another Christ, a Christopher, in his own home. He's meant to be that. So the husband then becomes the seed. The wife is the fertile ground. Sound familiar? Think biology. This is the way it works. So the husband is the seed. The wife is the fertile ground. And the wife nurtures and the wife supports. And through that fertile ground, there becomes a harvest. A child enters the world. And so both are directly connected. This is why marriage is so important. And guys, this is why we have to get this right. Because this is the way it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be, well, the wedding day was a lot of fun, bachelor party was even better. It's not supposed to be that our wives are so obsessed over what the dress looks like and the lace on the dress better match the icing on the wedding cake, or the bridesmaids have to look a certain way. All that stuff is just scenery. It really is. It's scenery. The miracle of the sacrament of matrimony occurs in the church, occurs in front of that altar. And it occurs then when the husband and wife come together in that one flesh union. And here's another thing that nobody really thinks about, because everybody thinks that it's just a big party, and then after you get married, then you just act like teenagers for the rest of your lives, jumping all over each other. And if the wife says, no, I'm really not into that right now, oh, now she's got a problem. See, that's not the way it's supposed to be. Not even close. Not even close. Because if you understand, men, if you realize what your responsibility is, if you understand it, if you understand, as Dave and I have said many, many times, we are called to be leaders, protectors, and providers. We are called to be the spiritual leaders of our homes.
My job is to get my wife to heaven.
Well, yeah, absolutely. That's it. And even to the point where we're responsible for that. I mean, why get married? Why get married if you're not looking to profoundly change your life? Why otherwise, why get married? I mean, are you looking for a tax write-off? That's no reason to get married.
I don't even think
I don't
even think that's a legitimate thing anymore, is it? The way our tax code is?
Well, probably not. That's true. I mean, it was when we were much younger. But here's one. Well, I need the health benefits at work. That I've heard that tons of times.
Yeah.
But, the reality is you should be getting married because God is calling you to this life of husband, fatherhood, the head of your domestic church. That's the reason to get married. Not because, well, I'm at a certain age in my life and I should be married now. My mom and dad are busting my chops. They keep telling me, what are you going to be, a bachelor? Well, maybe God's calling me to be a bachelor. I don't know. But I do know that the sacrament of matrimony is meant to be a reflection of the eternal wedding feast. That's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a reflection of that. It's supposed to be a reflection of everything that Jesus did for us. It's supposed to be a reflection of how much he loved the world, that he laid his life down for the world, and we are called to do the same thing within our home, between ourselves and our spouse, and then through the gift of children, if that's what God chooses to do. But what you see a lot, and what I get people all the time, I mean, I can't get into any specifics because of confidentiality, but I've had married couples, more than one, complain about, she's not happy because he doesn't pay her any attention. He's not happy because all she does is nag. She's not happy because all he wants is sex. He's not happy because she's constantly saying no. And it's like I sit there and I genuinely feel sorry for them, I mean genuine empathy, because they just don't get it. They see marriage as this worldly station in life. I mean, how many people, well, sadly, a lot of people go into a marriage thinking, yeah, if it doesn't work out, I'll just get divorced. Not a big deal. Or what's even worse, nah, I don't need to get married, but I'm going to live my life as if I am married, which I think is even worse. I'm going to play house. I'm going to accept children in my life, but no stability. No stability, no accountability. It's not good. It's not good, because that's not how God created us to live. Although, I guess if the devil wanted to really do a number, then one of the best things in the world the devil could do is to destroy the family, create this environment where all those old-fashioned ways of doing things are stupid and unnecessary and outdated. And you know what? Who needs it, right?
That's all the time we have this week. Tune in next week at this same time for the conclusion of this broadcast.
So we have a new email address for those of you that are interested in sending us your thoughts on the show or topics you'd like us to cover, prayer requests. If you want to just say hi, send us an email at throughthefire392@gmail.com. Through the Fire, all one word. Through the Fire 392, all together. throughthefire392@gmail.com. It's our new email address. Pray for us, because we definitely need that, and we'll keep praying for you. So it's throughthefire392@gmail.com.
Hey, Deacon, before we take our break, you wanted to say something about something at your parish.
Yes, absolutely. And this is an important program. It's called Catholics Returning Home Program. And my parish, St. Anne's in DeBary, Florida, is doing this. Catholics Returning Home Program is going to begin real soon. All inactive Catholics are cordially invited to participate in this program. You are welcome, you are loved, and you are missed. For details, please call 386-668-8270. That's 386-668-8270. One more time, 386-668-8270. Thank you.
The preceding program was a Spirit of Truth Radio Arts original program for CastingThe.net.